Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today. I am Jen Castillo. I am the manager of partnerships and scholarships here at NSCS. And I am so excited about today's ScholarCast. A few housekeeping items before we get started. We are going to record this webinar, and for those who couldn't join us, and also we'll be sending it to you via email in the next 48 hours. The chat feature is enabled. If you have any questions, please add them there, and we will do our best to get to all the questions at the very end of the presentation. Okay, let's get started. I would like to introduce our speaker from the Princeton Review, Christine Gather. Christine is a graduate of UC Berkeley and the Princeton Review's Director of National Partnerships. From sitting on admissions committees, reviewing confidential applicant files, making recommendations for admittance or denial, to conducting research for Steven Spielberg's Children's Action Network, she has dedicated herself to student success. Christine engages college and high school students with motivational yet practical workshops to inspire the next generation of leaders. Help me welcome Christine to the NSCS ScholarCast.
Hey, I think I'm here now. Can you hear me okay?
You are in here. Thank you so much, Christine.
No problem. I'm excited to be in. I know that we have a lot of different students with different backgrounds. So while I am pulling up my deck, I would love to have you add in the chat which type of graduate program you are interested in pursuing. And then also, Jen, if you wouldn't mind, as I'm pulling that up and as students are typing in, if you wouldn't mind saying that aloud, that would be great.
Sure, no problem.
Thank you.
Yeah, it looks like we have James, who's going to be going to law school, and Susan in medical administration, Jessica, medical school, Noelle, law. Wow, these are coming in quick and fast. We have a lot of students getting ready for their next steps.
So a lot of law school, is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, in med school, it
Med
looks
school,
like.
okay.
Yeah, quite a lot of different options here.
Okay, fantastic. If there are other ones that come in and you feel like I'm not quite addressing your journey, please let me know in the chat so I can slow down a little bit when we get to some particular slides. So my name is Christine Cather with the Princeton Review. I'm excited to be here, and just know that if you need to talk about your own individual path later on, you can always email me, christine.cather@review.com, and either I or one of my local team members can help just talk things through with you and see how we can be of service. And then also, if you are with the Princeton Review, most people know us as the test prep company. So when you get to the point when you are ready to actually prepare for the MCAT or LSAT, GMAT, GRE, just know that through the partnership, you do get a discount. So make sure that you're taking advantage of all the resources that you get through this collaboration. All right, so we're going to be talking about a couple of different things. First of all, why this path? Why is it important to know what's expected of you as you apply? Because there are a lot of different moving parts and pieces that will make up your application. And then we'll talk about how you can be a strong applicant. So we'll break down, because there are a lot of you in various different fields. We'll talk about we'll talk about general application needs, as well as some specifics depending on your path. And then we'll go on and talk about resources and tools that can help you stay on track, as well as some other free resources that can help you get ready to take those next steps. So we have a lot to talk about. I want to make sure that we cover as much as possible, but we are going to just start with this overview. Oftentimes, students aren't quite as aware of the different paths and different options that they have for themselves. When I was an undergrad, I was a poli-sci major, and I thought, law school is my only path. However, what you will come to learn is that you can pivot at any point, depending on your passions and interests. So I just wanted to lay out a general table here so you can see some different paths. We have a master's, PhD, MBA, and JD, for example. For those of you who are interested in the health fields, we'll talk a little bit about the medical school application timeline as well. And then if there's anything off of those traditional paths, again, just reach out to me and we can talk about your journey. For masters, however, we'll start there with the intent. The intent behind that is to get more in-depth knowledge in that particular field. Oftentimes people use it as a career boost or a pivot into a different field. It's generally about a 2-year program. After your bachelor's, you can go ahead and apply for a master's program. For pre-med students, where your grades aren't quite where you wanted them to be for your medical school application, if the grades are the missing piece of your puzzle, typically students may also do a master's in a science. And it's important to do it in a science to show your ability to handle the academic rigor of that medical school program. So again, for different uses, however, take it for your own particular path. For PhD programs, the intent behind that is to produce original research and you're filling gaps in knowledge. So the purpose behind that program is you become an expert in that particular field. You gain research skills in a very challenging environment. The duration is longer than the master's, so generally 4 to 6 years. After your master's, then you can then apply to a PhD program. For the MBA program, so this is the business school path. So the intent, you're learning management skills and theory. The purpose behind that is a career advancement or pivoting into a business field. Typically in many C-suite, like the CEO, CFO, CMO, in those C-suite type of roles, you might often see that MBA requirement. It's generally 2 years for a full-time day program. And this is where it differs. Whereas for many other programs, you can go straight from your undergrad. With the MBA program, they typically like to see at least 2 to 4 years of work experience. However, there are some schools that have straight paths, but those are a lot more rare to see. So generally though, they like to see 2 to 4 years of work experience. And then for the JD path, I heard a lot of you saying that you're interested in becoming a lawyer. The intent behind that JD path is for you to learn to think like a lawyer. Generally, the purpose is to become a practicing attorney. The full-time day program is typically 3 years. It's a 3-year program. The eligibility, again, after a bachelor's, you can head in and apply to law school. The exams, across the bottom, you'll see different exams. The requirements will vary. During COVID, a lot of the master's and PhD programs started making the GRE exam test optional. So we got a lot of questions about that. If it is test optional, what should I do at that point? Think of it as a way to enhance the academic transcript. So if, similar to what I mentioned about the pre-med students, if their grades aren't showing their ability to handle the academic rigor, that perhaps a master's in the science can help fill that gap. Similarly for you, if your grades aren't reflective of your potential to succeed in that academic environment, perhaps the GRE can help plug that hole. So a strong GRE score can show further evidence of your readiness to take that next leap forward into that program. So it will differ. If it's test optional, it will differ for you, and it depends completely on your situation. If you would like to take a free practice GRE exam or GMAT or LSAT, just know that we will send a follow-up and we will send those resources also. The best thing about those practice exams is they are free. You do it on your own time, on your own laptop. And then after you take the exam, you can actually dive deep into the student score report, where you'll get a student score report that shows the questions you got right, the questions you got wrong, and a high-level overview of the different topics and where your strengths and weaknesses lie. So that's always a great starting point. And so often when we do these practice tests, students feel more confident because they typically don't do as poorly as they expected. And it's such a fear, that exam weighs so heavily on students. So just pulling off the Band-Aid, taking a practice test, knowing that baseline, knowing your starting point can help you feel more confident to complete the rest of the application pieces. For business school and the MBA programs, many programs typically will ask for the GMAT or GRE. So the GMAT we have a practice test for that as well. Moving on to JD, the LSAT is the typical exam that many students take. However, most programs also accept the GRE. So what is nice is if you aren't quite sure if you want to do a master's or PhD or an MBA program or JD, that GRE is very general and can fill many different needs. If you know specifically, hey, I'm going to get my MBA or I'm going to get my JD, and those exams, the GMAT and the JD, really highlight your skills, then that would be a great way for you to, again, show off those strengths. So all of these tests just provide further evidence of your readiness to handle the academic rigor that you are about to face. We'll get to the MCAT in a little bit. That's a different beast. I thought I heard somebody talk about wanting to go to medical school. But in general, one more thing to think about as you are trying to figure out the different programs that you're interested in. We'll deep dive into it a little bit further, but some things to keep in mind. Typically, your GPA and that test score are an initial threshold that schools will take a look at, but it is not the end all be all, especially with the race neutral admissions. That holistic review is truly holistic. So your activities, your experiences, your leadership, your service, social, who you are outside of all of this, the story you're telling, all of that really comes into play. And all of that also helps define what's important to you. And in that, then you can help yourself find programs whose missions align with yours. So what I suggest you do so that you can start really honing down that school list is start a spreadsheet for yourself where you list the program that you're interested in. After that, list the average GPA. After that, list the average test score, whether that is the GRE, LSAT, GMAT, MCAT, DAT, whatever it is for your particular program. So we have the program name, the GPA, the test score. But then after that, start diving deeper. While you're in that website already, go ahead and pull in that mission statement. Many programs over the last 2 years worked really hard to update those mission statements to truly reflect their values so that they could find students whose values really align and students who demonstrated their alignment through their activities and experiences. So all of this is going to come together to form a big picture of who you are so that they know, are you a good fit, not just for business school, but for our particular program. So now we added that mission statement. After that mission statement, go ahead and add an extra column because many schools will have supplemental essays that are really starting now to take a deep dive into their particular programs. You'll want to know what is it about this particular program that is really attracting you to that program. So go ahead and add some notes there because again, it'll help you as you are honing down that school list, but also it's going to help you as you are starting to think about your activities and how do they fit in and show evidence of your interest in this particular program. And then also these little notes will help you as you are then writing your supplemental essays during the application process. And some things to consider with these extras are here on this page. Like what type of course offerings does this particular program have? If you're interested in entertainment law, perhaps UCLA, because of their course offerings, is a great fit. Well, who is the faculty? Do they offer any other types of experiences or clinicals, internships, summer programs? Name them specifically because if you can then tie in those specific names to your supplemental essays, the program on the other end knows that you are not writing this to 50 other programs. You are interested in mine. And now I'm more interested in you. So small steps now can help you set yourself up for success and be really focused and intentional when you actually do apply. And then lastly, some funding and financial considerations may come into play. So how expensive is the city? How big is the city? And then as it gets closer to actually deciding which program to be part of, you will then start weighing out different financial aid packages and such. With medical school, that doesn't come into play as much. However, for the other programs with business schools, law schools, other master's or PhD programs, those funding and financial considerations could play a part. So stepping back again to the spreadsheet where you are starting to organize the programs that you're interested in. So you have your program name, you have the GPA, you have the average test score, you have the mission, You have other specific considerations about this program. And now add another column where you can write down or add in the letters of recommendation or letters of evaluation that that program is looking for. The programs can vary. So you want to know that you're not behind the 8 ball when it comes time to your application. So write down if it's like, what are their minimums? What are their maximums? Is there a specific set number? And then the next column after that, add in who those letter writers should be. Many programs may be specific. For example, somebody may say for a medical school, it must be like an upper division science professor who writes. You just need to know all of the expectations so that you can start laying the groundwork to collect all of that information, find the right people who can really vouch for you and write you those strong letters. So we have a lot of different pieces of information on that spreadsheet, but it will come in very handy and will help you stay and feel in control of a process that can otherwise feel extremely stressful and out of control. So innately, it is stressful. However, take the steps that can help you feel as in control as possible. And knowing what these programs are asking of you is that first step in feeling in control. So you know what you need and you know what things that you can start doing to set yourself up for success. All right. Are we all still good, Jen? My slides are moving along with me. People can hear me?
Oh yeah, everything's good.
Fantastic. Thank you. So next, how can you be a strong applicant? I've spoken about the different pieces of the application, but let's take another look just to reiterate and break that down. So if you are looking to continue your education after undergrad, are all the pieces in place before you apply? So I've mentioned before that grades and the test scores, whether that is the LSAT, GRE, GMAT, MCAT, whatever that is, those two typically are an initial threshold. However, it is not the end all be all. So holistic review truly is holistic review. We have many highly qualified academic candidates who don't make it past the screenings, who don't get that interview because it is all just the metrics that they're looking at. But there are so many other things. The strength of your courses. Did you challenge yourself? When they look at that transcript, can they see the type of student you are and the type of challenges you're willing to take on? Perhaps you didn't get a great grade in the beginning, but you're trending positively. That's okay. Not everyone has a perfect track record when it comes to your undergrad experience. If you are tracking and trending in the positive direction, that's fantastic. Your resume, activities, and experiences say so much about you because it is giving them an indication of the type of student and the type of person you are and the type of contribution you make once you step foot on their campus. So all of the pieces that you are now putting together in your application are showing evidence to them of your genuine interest, and it is telling them, hey, this person has demonstrated this interest. They're not just saying it, they've shown it. And this is the type of thing that they will do once they're part of our program as well. So it is so important to expose yourself to the fields of interest for you so that you can show the reader of your application on the other side that it's not just you think this might be of interest, you know this is a passion. And as you are in your graduate school programs, it's going to be so much more challenging than what you've experienced as an undergrad. So they also need to know that your why is so strong that despite challenges, which are inevitable, that you will push through and you will make it toward the end, towards graduation. You'll become employable, you'll move on and give back and make a bigger impact on the society. So all of these small individual puzzle pieces fit together to tell that strong story of who you are and why they should make you a member of that incoming class and why them betting on you and creating a space for you will be a safe bet for them because they know you've demonstrated your interest, you've shown you can handle the academic rigor, you've shown your interest and passion, and they know then that once they mold you even more through their courses and through their teaching, that you'll go out and make an even bigger impact. So letters of recommendation are another puzzle piece that will help tell that story, as our personal statements, those supplemental essays. Oftentimes during the application process, when you are looking at many different programs, you may not realize that some programs have extra supplemental essays. Those extra supplemental essays, if it is if it is a topic in which you can add value and deeper thought as to who you are as an applicant, don't pass that opportunity to tell more of your story. Also, it's an opportunity, especially when they're asking, well, why our program? What are you hoping to do? It is an easy way for you to start pulling in all those extra notes you put into your spreadsheet. After the mission, we talked about those notes you added in about why this particular program is attracting you to the program. The example I gave was entertainment law for UCLA Law School. That's the time now to pull in specific classes, internships, career center postings, whatever it is, to show them that you have genuinely been interested in this school's program. These are the reasons why. And that it's not just a surface, hey, I don't really care where I end up. Like, no, I want to end up at UCLA Law because of this. And these are the things that your program will do to help me get to where I want to go. So throughout this process, the goal for you is to tell a complete story with all these different puzzle pieces, make them fit together so it's a clear picture of who you are and why you want to end up in that program. If you have missing pieces, if you have a couple of missing puzzle pieces, right now is the time to start filling those. So whatever your own personal weaknesses are, maybe you have the greatest academic track record, but you need more experience, then that's your path. Maybe you have all these things, but you don't have any letter writers. So now you need to start networking and talking with your supervisors or your upper division professors or whatever that might be. Go to office hours. Whatever your missing puzzle piece is, start finding ways to address and attack those missing pieces so you are ready with that complete, strong picture of you, your why, and why this program is the best one for you. And then if a program requires an interview, that's a great way for them to actually finally get beyond the metrics, get beyond the file, and they start talking with you. The interviews will vary depending on your program. So just make sure that you're doing your research so you know what type of interview to expect so you're not surprised. During COVID, many went to virtual interviews, and especially with the medical schools, one thing that we've heard from medical school directors and admissions teams is that the students weren't reading the emails. They did not realize that in this medical school interview that they were going to be asked to spin their laptop around and show their entire room. Students didn't open the email and they didn't read that. So we have a student feeling super confident, super ready. And if you're like me, I've cleared one little area of the house for this interview and maybe the rest of the room is a mess. And all of a sudden, a student is thrown off in the very beginning of their interview because they're spinning, showing this room that they probably didn't want to show the rest of. And there's a good reason for that. They want to make sure you don't have your best friend in the corner holding up cue cards like you're on SNL, like giving you answers. So just really pay attention, read all the emails, know what type of interview it is. Perhaps also know if it's going to be like a traditional type of interview or an interview where you're put in different situations. How long is this interview? How should you be dressed? Make sure you're doing your research so you feel great. If you got invited to an interview, they're so interested in you because very few people get that interview. So make the most of each interview. Be as prepared as possible with stories that you can bring, as well as logistically, what do you need to do? Well, you have to show your entire room. How many people will you be meeting? Make sure your shoes are polished yet comfortable. Small things like that that can make a difference. All right. Quickly, I want to talk about the different exams because, like I said, the exam and the GPA are typically an initial threshold that schools will take a look at. Again, you will get an opportunity to take your own free practice test. And so this is just what to expect, and I'll go over the GRE, the shortened exam. It starts with a 30-minute essay. You'll have two quantitative reasoning sections, which are high school level math, and you'll have two verbal sections. What is interesting about the GRE is it is computer adaptive by section. So how you do on the first section of the GRE determines the level of difficulty of questions you'll face in that second section. So you'll start off with medium difficulty type questions. If you do well, you'll get harder questions, but you will end up in that higher scoring range depending on how you do, because the algorithm or the computer knows that you've been given harder questions. If you do okay, you'll get that mixed bag of questions. If you don't do as well, you'll get mostly easy questions. You might think, yay, I'm riding high on this. This is great. However, because the system knows you've been given easier questions, your score will be reflective of that. So I equate this to gymnasts. So you can have a gymnast who does a perfect routine. However, because of the lack of difficulty, all of the skills were very simple. Perhaps the highest they can score is an 8.5, no matter what else they do, because the level of difficulty wasn't there. Yet you have someone who does like a Simone Biles, who does a quadruple this or, triple that. That level of difficulty puts their scoring range higher. So despite a bobble here or there, they're still in that higher scoring range. So hopefully that makes sense to you guys. And this is just an example of how those scoring ranges could end up depending on the level of difficulty. Again, the quantitative section is just high school level math. So you could be going back to something from freshman year. So a lot of that is just really reviewing. And then once you've reviewed the content, applying that content into strategies in a timed condition so that you can simulate that environment. And then you'll get a sense of which questions do you even have to really go through, which ones can you go through quickly because you have some tricks up your sleeve or whatever that might be. So the LSAT, starting in August, that too got shortened. So all these exams got shortened, which you get to benefit from. So now you have the reading comprehension section, and then you have 2 logical reasoning argument sections. What's nice is the analytical reasoning, the game section, which tended to be the most challenging for people, has gone away. And then you have an unscored variable section. So it could be either reading comp or the logical reasoning. So you'll hear like the RC or LR, that's just reading comp or logical reasoning. So that unscored variable section, in it, they're basically testing future questions that they are considering putting on future test administrations. So you won't be scored on those. So don't try to guess which one is scored or not scored. Just do your best across the sections. But just know that that is a separate, or that is unscored, although it's part of the exam. And then the LSAT writing sample is going to be a separate piece that you do proctored on your computer. With that essay, as soon as AI started coming around, I thought to myself, the LSAT writing, which kind of became an afterthought for many people, I felt like it was going to become more important, and I am hearing that it is becoming more important because it is proctored. They can actually see and know that you are answering this in real time versus relying on AI in your personal statement or your supplemental essay. So this LSAT writing, do not think of this as, because it's separate and not scored, don't think of it as a throwaway piece. This is another piece of evidence that somebody can use to help support you. If there's an admissions committee member going to bat for you, they can pull in pieces from any part of your application. All right. Let me see, because of time, I'm going to go through this a little bit quickly, but I did want to say this is important for prospective law school students because 90 ABA approved law schools were surveyed and asked what skills are important. What skills will the legal students or the law students be exercising in their classes? And so I thought this was really interesting because if you can start sharpening these skills as an undergrad, it will help you tremendously when you are in law school. So reading critically, you'll be applying a statute to new facts, identifying the statute operating a case, identifying key facts in a case, inductive reasoning, a lot of reading class materials, arguing logically and persuasively. So these are great skills that you can start thinking about. How can I start practicing these skills and then showing them in a way, whether through, if it's through research or whatever that is, mock trial, whatever things you're involved in, how can you show that you are ready to handle that? And then the GMAT, because all these other exams got shortened, the GMAT too has the focus edition. So it's now 2 hours and 15 minutes. You have your quantitative reasoning, your verbal reasoning, and then your data insights. Your data insights, you'll be reading charts and graphs and things. The GMAT used to have an essay. They removed that essay. And so now with this quantitative, verbal, and data insights, what is interesting about the GMAT is it is computer adaptive by question, whereas the GRE was computer adaptive by section. So that GRE, how you did on section 1, determines the level of difficulty of section 2. The GMAT, it is computer adaptive by question. How you do on that one question determines the level of difficulty of the next set of questions, and so on down your path. What is nice though is there were some updates made to the GMAT. So we will be sharing this, and this is taken from GMAT. I did not create this. This is their beautiful graphic focus from a GMAT Focus Edition flyer that I came across. You will get a PDF of the stack, or I will follow up and send a PDF of the stack. But again, you can go straight to the sources on this, whether that's the GRE or the GMAT or LSAT. MCAT, for you pre-med students, you have the pleasure of sitting for a 7.5-hour exam. 7.5 hours. So with your sections, you will see Chem Phys, CARS, which is the critical analysis and reasoning skills, which are passages that you will then read through and answer questions on. Then go back to the sciences with biochem, and psych-soc. Interestingly enough, the critical analysis and reasoning skills section, where it's the passages, that could be philosophy, history, whatever those are. CARS section across the board tends to be the section that pulls people's scores down. So minus maybe a handful of states, it is typically the lowest scoring section on the MCAT. Knowing that, if you are in your first or second year or wherever you are in your journey, you can start doing active reading, start thinking about the author's point of view. What are they trying to say and convey? Start doing some active reading so that when you are actually preparing for the MCAT, the CARS section doesn't slow you down. And again, like I've said, evidence shows it slows most pre-med students down. For the MCAT with a 7.5-hour exam, it is many students end up taking it twice, and that's totally normal. What we do suggest is that after you take it the first time, though, that you give yourself enough time. You don't just dive back in and take it again without fixing and addressing the sections that were areas of opportunity for you. So we want to make sure you give yourself enough time to really focus on some of the areas of weakness so that when you take it again, you can really improve that score. And then also something that many students who've taken it multiple times say is that they wish they would have done more practice questions and full-length practice tests the first time. So because it is so long and because there's so much material covered, many students focus just on the content, but you cannot do that. It is not just the content. You really need to think about the strategy as well. So with us, with our MCAT course, it's 70% content, 30% strategy, and we have full-length practice tests every weekend throughout that course. So you are building up your stamina and focus, because as you can imagine, if you take each one of these sections individually, that's a whole different ballgame. It's when you start stacking them together, you're adding in the fatigue, the stress, the lack of focus. All of that has to be practiced. And if you're wondering, oh my gosh, why is this so long? Well, medical school is going to be challenging. Again, all these little pieces show evidence of your readiness to tackle that next big challenge. And when you're in medical school, you have a longer step 1, an even longer step 2, and then a 2-day step 3 that you get through. So again, you are just showing them, hey, I am ready to take this on. All right. For you pre-med students, I just want you to be aware that your GPA will be looked at in some different ways. The BCPM are your biologies, your chemistries, your physics, your math. So they're going to take a look at your BCPM GPA and then all others. On the right are just the sections of the MCAT again, but I just want to remind you that it is not just your grades. They'll look at the strength of your courses, your grade trends, perhaps if you've done a post-bac program or a master's. So all of those can get factored in as well. So just wanted you to be aware. And then across the board, no matter which path you are on, the activities, the experience, leadership, service, social, all those things become evidence of who you are, who your passions are, how you've demonstrated that interest. It's places where you are starting to sharpen your written and communication skills, your empathy, your critical analysis and reasoning skills. All of those things get sharpened through these activities. And our med admissions counseling team specifically came up with an acronym to help you kind of just put together all of the different extra pieces that really are an important piece of your application. And they become a lot of times the heart and soul of your application because so many students have similar GPAs. They have similar test scores. So now these other pieces in class, the clinicals, leadership, academic, service, and social, this becomes the heart of who you are and starts distinguishing you from the rest of the applicants. So clinicals, leadership, academic, service, and social. And when I attended the Stanford Undergraduate Minority Medical Association conference, I think it was last February, the director of Stanford Medical School admissions put up a slide like this. I screenshotted it, then recreated it. So it is not my work, but it was so impactful when I saw it and when the students heard it that I wanted to share it with you. And they called this, in terms of the activities, their barometer of participation. And the focus is not just what you've done, but your level of impact. So with the level of impact, starting here at that bottom circle where you see people showing up, it's nice and dandy to show up as an undergrad, but if you're looking to take your education that step further, then it needs to be more. So perhaps that next rung is showing up consistently. You are part of something for a long time. That's great too. However, if you're looking to go to business school, to law school, get your master's, your PhD, go to medical school, whatever it is, the students are exceptional. And the level of impact that they've made on organizations they've been a part of, that needs to be exceptional as well. And so start thinking of, how can I get to these outer rungs so that the quality is more important than the quantity of what you're doing. So what they like to see then at Stanford are students who are making an impact in these outer rings through leadership, through innovation, and that can be research, through advocacy, and then that biggest outer ring, did the student create something that can leave a lasting legacy? And these are the types of students, when you think about it, these are the types of students that programs want to bring in because they know that they're going to create something that will impact more than just that individual person. It is much bigger than you at that point, and that's the type of student that many programs are looking to find. So hopefully you find this resonates with you as well, or helps you see things and your activities through a different lens. Again, from the Stanford School of Medicine, all kudos to them. I really enjoyed listening in on that conference and hearing that barometer of participation. All right. I'm going to just check. Oh, I'm so glad. Thank you. Thank you so much for mentioning that the information is helpful. And then this is just my note to you. Because we have so many different areas, I want to start encouraging you to dive deep into the programs that you're interested in so you know exactly what that program is looking for. So for example, this is insights from UCLA's business school, just from the UCLA Graduate School of Management website. So here, what I love is that they lay out quality of experience is more important than quantity. We look at your impact in the context of the time you had in the field you're in. Diverse paths. I love this. We are most impressed by increasing levels of responsibility over time. Those who advance faster than their peers are the people we admit first. So there are so many clues within the website as to the types of things that you should be highlighting on your application. So make sure that you take the time to investigate the programs that you are interested in so that you can see what's of importance to them. And then you can craft that big picture. You can make those puzzle pieces, paint the picture of who you are. Again, it's not just you trying to fit into a school's mission. It is finding that win-win where your genuine passions align with that program's mission and vision. All right. So moving on here. Okay, experiences, what types of experiences can you get? It depends again on the program, but for those of you who are looking to go to law school, I know it is difficult to try to get into a law firm, but if you can, that's a great way for you to even know for yourself, not even for your application, but to know for yourself that that is actually what you want to do, because a lot of things are different in theory versus you rolling up your sleeves and seeing it. And different fields of law can be so different. The type of environment that each different field of law has within their office environment is so different. So if you can, get an internship at a law firm, perhaps over the summer during the school year, check in with your career centers. Oftentimes the career centers are pre-health or pre-law advisors, social science advisors. Oftentimes they might have leads to help you get that experience. You can volunteer at clinics, whether that is, a legal clinic on campus, a community clinic, whatever that is. Shadow, if you know of someone, or create your LinkedIn profile, polish that up, see if you can shadow an alum who is the type of lawyer you want to be, or researching a specific area that is of interest to you, and potentially maybe you're interested in that program for a PhD program. Whatever it is, start just preparing yourself by getting that LinkedIn polished and ready so you can start networking and reaching out and finding out more. The more you know, the more pointed you can be and intentional you can be on where your area of focus is. Oftentimes, like I said, as you are young, the world is your oyster right now. So explore, because not everything is as it seems in your head. The only way to really get to know it is to immerse yourself in that experience. So as uncomfortable as it may be for you to start reaching out to people, that is the world we live in, and the people who ask tend to get more. So right now, no matter what else you get out of this workshop, I'm hoping that you start advocating for yourself, start asking for opportunities, but you have to be able to back it up by having everything ready, whether that's your CV, your resume, your LinkedIn. Have all of that ready so that when you do ask, you are prepared to share any information that they need, and then you open the door for more opportunities. And just know that even if there's an opportunity that maybe you're like, oh my gosh, I thought I would love it and I really didn't, that's still not a waste, because now you can cross that off your list and hey, that wasn't it for me. Now I know I want to pivot in this direction. And so it is not wasted time at all. It helped you focus. So your attitude towards these experiences becomes very important as well. All right. Getting strong letters of recommendation or evaluation. Think about, who your letter writer should be. That was one of the categories on that Excel spreadsheet I talked about. It is very important to pay attention to the directions from the school. So who those letter writers should be, and then think about what can you do to help them with the process. Well, perhaps your polished resume, LinkedIn, CV, perhaps that can be attached. If you have a great draft of your personal statement, that can also be attached. Great drafts of any supplemental essays, attach that. Do everything possible to make it as easy as possible for your letter writer to write a strong letter of recommendation. And when you ask them to write a letter, use that word strong, because if they wince in any way, if their body language indicates they might not write you a strong letter, that might not be their letter writer for you, and it's better for you to know now. So start reading the room, start reading that body language, make sure that you are, again, advocating for yourself to make your application as strong as possible. So are you open to writing me a strong letter of recommendation? But then also make sure they know the deadlines. Do not spring it on them. So when should you ask? You should ask as early as possible, when you know that you'll be applying to plant that seed, and then make it as easy as possible by providing them with helpful resources. And then how should you ask them? In person, if possible, so you can read that body language. That is the ideal. If you can't ask them in person, just maybe over video, just somewhere where you can read their body language so you can know for yourself if that is somebody who is willing to write you that strong letter. And then your different portals will have different ways that the people will submit their letters. Side note, for the pre-med students, oftentimes the first cycle of your application may not be as successful as you hoped, and that's totally normal. If you end up having to reapply, unless you used a platform like Interfolio, which we are not part of Interfolio at all. I just met them at a conference and I've had many students talk about Interfolio. Interfolio is a place that can house the letters so that if you have to apply again, you can resubmit those. And that's a paid service. Again, we're not affiliated with them, but many students have utilized that service. Again, the purpose of these letter writers is to shed light on your character and your ability. Have you demonstrated the core competencies that that program is looking for? And are they people who have witnessed you in action and they can directly attest to your ability to handle those, what is to come? So I'm going to provide this to you. Time is running out. We have a little over 10 minutes, but you're going to get a PDF of this. I will follow up with you after I get the list. And these are just some notes for yourself, like who should write your letters? And then, what is your application saying about you? So these are just questions that you can start asking yourself. At the end of the day, all of the different pieces, again, have to fit together to tell that clear picture, paint that clear picture of who you are, what your strengths are, why you want to do what you're applying to do, and what you hope to do after, and why this program is going to help you get there. So again, there are a lot of different pieces, but they're not random. The pieces should fit together to paint a clear picture. Who am I? Why do I want this path? Why this program in particular? How will I make an impact? What is their mission? Is it aligned with my own personal mission? And what do I want to do from there? Can this program help me get to that next step? So your personal statement is typically the place where you can pull it all together. But there are character limitations to those essays, so it is really hard. So just keep in mind that an admissions committee member will typically take away 3 to 5 key points from any part of your application. So make sure that you're giving yourself enough time to really craft a polished piece that you're going to submit. So whether that's your interview or the activities, if you have to do a resume, maybe it's your personal statement, maybe it's your GPA that they remember most, or your test score, whatever it is, make sure that you are not rushing through any piece of your application thinking, oh, well, this piece isn't important. All the pieces of your application are important. This I took from the Graduate Management Admission Council guide, so from the GMAC guide. For them, they gave this great tip about putting together your MBA story. What story do you want to tell? Again, this was clipped directly from one of their past guides. My MBA story. I am a blank leader with a background in blank. I want to get an MBA now because it will blank. That will help me to blank as I strive to achieve my career goal of blank. So having this story crystallized and clear in your head will help you then put together the different pieces that can help further clarify your story, whether that be letter writers who are then enhancing what you're saying, whether that's your supplemental essays that are enhancing what you're saying, it's your interviews, answers that are enhancing all of that. Just make it a really clear story. And oftentimes, just think of it as Netflix. So those top 10 Netflix trending movies or shows, typically they are shows that have a really strong storyline, depth of character, the richness in the character development and that arc. And those stories just sit with you and you can tell your friends about it because it is an easy to summarize type of story. Very similar is your application. So if an admissions committee member has to stand up and fight for you, can they crystallize your story and do they have specific pieces of evidence that will help them stand up and advocate for you? All right, so some pitfalls to avoid. I mentioned in the beginning that sometimes people tend to rest on their GPA and their test score laurels, which can no longer happen because many students will have similar GPAs and similar test scores. They are important because they help keep more doors open, but it needs to go beyond that. So 3 pitfalls to avoid, even with strong GPA and a strong test score. We want to make sure that you don't have any missing components. We want to make sure you're applying at the wrong time, and we want to make sure that you're packaging yourself well. So missing components, it differs depending on the program. So for example, pre-med students, if you don't have clinical experience, clinical hours, that could be a missing component. If you don't have a strong letter of recommendation, whatever it is for your program, make sure you have all the different components of that program. And then also make sure you apply at the right time. So the right time is when you are ready. Do not feel like you have to rush straight as an undergrad into the next step. When you are taking gap years in between, it is a great time for you to get that experience. A lot of times it's a huge financial and time commitment. So the stronger you feel about being ready for this program, the better off you'll be. So apply at the right time for your own personal life. But then on the flip side of that, know the deadlines so that you can apply earlier in the cycle to give yourself more of a chance to actually get an interview if that's part of your process and get accepted. And then the last pitfall is not packaging yourself well. So if you've done all these amazing things, yet you are not articulating that in your personal statement or in your description of your activities or in your interview, or you're not describing things well as you're putting your resume together, then that could potentially eliminate you, even though you've done these amazing things. So you've got to have all the components, apply at the right time for you when you're ready, apply at the right time in the cycle, and then also package it in a great way that tells a clear story as to who you are, why you're a great fit for this program, and why you're a great fit for this field. All right, so what resources can help you achieve your goals, timelines, stay on track? Again, do your own research. This is, again, the business school, Anderson School of Management, so UCLA's business school. They have it very clear on their website. Look at your own personal programs. They have, for business school, it's a little different. You'll see round 1, round 2, round 3. That is unique for business schools versus, medical schools or law schools. So just do your research, find out what the deadlines are for those particular rounds. This is an example from Berkeley Law. You can see here, one of the things that I wanted to point out was November 15th, binding early decision application deadline. Before you apply for binding early decision, I just want to make sure that you've read the definition for what that means. Oftentimes it means that if you get into that program, you're going to remove your applications from all other schools. So small things like that, just be aware of the timelines, but also what the definitions are so you know exactly what it is that you're getting yourself into. All right. And then again, this is for most graduate school programs. I'm going to send the PDF of this so you can kind of give yourself personal deadlines. If you're already on this track and you feel, oh my gosh, I'm already behind, you are okay with right where you are. Just pick up with what you can pick up on and start from there, whether that's starting to craft your personal statement, whether that is planting the seeds with your letter writers, whatever that is for you, you can manage your time from here. It is okay. Don't ever feel like, oh my gosh, this isn't the right time. If it is ever a little too close to the process, especially for medical pre-med students, then maybe the next cycle might be the better time for you. So again, it depends on where you personally are in your process. For the medical school application timeline, I will say that for you, your timeline is a lot longer. You're doing a lot of things. If you're not taking a gap year, you're doing a lot of things over the course of your 3rd year. So for you, because the MCAT is not happening all the time, or it doesn't occur as often as some of the other exams, you really do have to plan your MCAT prep. You really do have to plan your MCAT test dates, which are like the hottest concert ticket in town to get. You really do have to think about your descriptions for your 15 activities and experiences. You have to make sure your letter writers are in tune with your own timeline. So you have your primary application, and then after you have your secondary essays and your interview. So for the pre-med students, we can perhaps do like a separate pre-med timeline because that one is a little bit longer. And everything is just a little bit more with the pre-med students. But at the end of the day, we want to make sure you're ready to submit for opportunities. We want to make sure you're ready to talk with your advisors. You have so many great resources on campus. I went to a large public school, so even when I talk with the students today, they're like, it's just so hard to get an appointment. The great thing is now we have this foundation through this workshop, so you can take information that you learned here and now really maximize your 30 minutes with them. So hopefully you have more foundational language so you can ask more intentional and pointed questions when you have your 30-minute appointment with your on-campus advisor. Be ready to ask for letters of recommendation. Be ready to draft your personal statement. Be ready to take the appropriate exam and be ready to key in the application. It is always going to take longer than expected to key it in, so don't wait until the last minute. Pre-med students, side note for you, oftentimes students enter their coursework incorrectly and it doesn't, it's not in line with the transcript that you submit, and then your application can get kicked back to you, which puts you a little further behind in getting your supplemental secondary essays out. So little things like download an unofficial transcript, so when you're keying in your coursework, it matches exactly. So small things like that can help alleviate stress. Hit all your marks, better grades, better scores, better applications, better schools. For med school students, just know that for your programs, I don't suggest you getting stuck on brand names. Like, those medical school programs are really challenging, really difficult. Be proud of where you get in. For the other schools, law schools, master's programs, PhDs, business schools, the name tends to carry a little bit of weight in terms of what you end up doing afterwards. But no matter what, be proud of where you end up and make the most of every opportunity wherever you end up. Ultimately, it is up to you to make the most of your opportunities. Test prep discounts when you are ready to take the LSAT, GRE, GMAT, MCAT. Just know we are here. You do get a discount for being part of your organization. My email is here. My coordinator, Jacob, will likely follow up and reach out, give you access to free practice tests, as well as a reminder of what that actual test prep code is. So that was a lot of information. I'm going to stop sharing. Jen, I hope we did not overwhelm people, and I hope that the information was helpful.
Oh my gosh, it was amazing. That was really a fantastic presentation. I learned so much that I didn't know about. I know that we got a couple of questions, so we'll maybe go through maybe two or three. I've just picked out a couple. And then I know a lot of people have asked about the recording. You will receive the recording within 48 hours. So be on the lookout. Most likely it'll be on Friday. But there's a lot of great information there. Thank you so much, Christine. Okay, let's get through a couple of these questions. Let's see. I know we had one. A student is online for her undergrad, and she's not able to make the same kind of connections. Who do you recommend she should go to for a letter of recommendation?
So again, make sure that you fulfill whatever that program is asking. But if you have choices within that, my suggestion is, if through your activities and experiences, typically that's where people get to know you the most. So if you've at least fulfilled one of your academic ones, if there is an academic requirement, like, you can't get around that. However, for your other ones, find people who have really seen you in action. And if you still have time before you apply, maybe make it a point to step it up a little bit and start really connecting with those people.
That's great advice. I love that. One other question is the JD for lawyers only.
It is not for lawyers only, but the focus is on learning to think like a lawyer. So you can do many other things with that JD, but just know it's also an expensive process. So just make sure that the money you're making on the back end can help you still feel comfortable knowing you went through that process. Is that a gentle way to say that, Jen?
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you so much. I have one last question I picked out, and then we'll make sure that, if you have any other questions that came up, that you thought about after the presentation, make sure you email Christine. I'm sure she can help you. The last question I had on here is the GRE similar to the SAT?
It is similar in that actually right now they're both digital, but with the computer adaptive nature of the exam, it adds a little different of an element, and then it is a more enhanced. Whereas if you think about it, most high school students will be taking the SAT or ACT. And then for those taking the GRE, it's typically people who are extra driven because not everyone needs to go on to that next step. So it's like a step up.
That's great. One thing that stood out to me that I want to make sure I point out is you had a slide on class. And I was just thinking about how our NSCS members are already on the path getting experience with leadership and service, and obviously have their academics going well. So that was really encouraging to see, and I hope all of our members realize what an advantage NSCS is. But thank you again, Christine. It was so lovely to have you with us. We learned so much, and we will be sending out this information. Thank you guys for attending.
Thank you all. I really appreciate your time.